Saram, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to the Christmas joy that is all over in Prasanthi Nilayam. The Cyclone Hall is so beautifully being decked up in green and red and gold. On top of Bhagwan's Sannidhi, you have in big bold letters the words joy to the world. So amazing when you look at every temple, every tree, every institution, every pillar, every gate in Prasanthi Nilayam, so nicely decked up, isn't it, Prem? And today you go to any part of Prasanthi Nilayam and you will find bells and banners and flowers and lights and candles and garlands. Prasanthi Nilayam puts on a different attire, a completely new attire every Christmas. And this year, since the pandemic is history, we have devotees from New Zealand, Australia and Fiji who have been so busy trying to make this celebration a grand affair, a colorful affair. Christmas is always an occasion of so much cheer, and we really are looking forward to the celebration in Prasanthi Nilayam, and so happy to see that Prasanthi is today going back to the pre-pandemic days of celebrating Christmas, isn't it, Prem?
Absolutely, and wonderful Christmas greetings to all sisters and brothers. Talking about Christmas in Prasanthi, of course, Christmas anywhere with Swami around is very, very special. And there's a very beautiful Christmas memory that I often recall almost every Christmas. I'm sure, I think you also would have been around when Swami celebrated the Christmas in Vrindavan one year.
Yes.
I think we're going to celebrate the anniversary of the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences, 19th of January.
Yes.
And that year, in preparation for the inauguration, Swami spent a lot of time in Vrindavan.
Yes.
So Swami chose to celebrate Christmas in Vrindavan. So I'm sure even as we speak, there are some devotees sitting in some corner of the ashram and practicing carols. So Vrindavan ashram is a small one. So they would practice carols in the Sai Ramesh hall. So I recall that Swami had called all of us. He used to call us for the Trai sessions in Swami's Mandir. And Swami would ask somebody to speak, or Swami himself would discourse. But there would be these times between talks when there used to be silence. And sitting there in Swami's presence, we could hear the practice of the carols happening in the Ramesh hall. Right? And we remember sitting there and Swami just closing his eyes for a few seconds and just enjoying the practice of the carols which was coming along. And Swami will have a gentle smile on his face. And Swami would say, "Isn't it so beautiful?" Right? Wow. And every time I recall this image, I mean, isn't it a very powerful and beautiful message that Swami was giving all of us? Not only is the final presentation that you make, be it Christmas or any other festival when we make a presentation for Swami, but even the practice, Swami is there listening and accepting that offering. Right? I think that is a spiritual message that we know of, but sitting there we could actually see it. Swami is listening to the practice of the carols, and I think that's the message for all of us. Not only is the completed task an offering, but even the process of the effort is an offering to Swami.
Absolutely, and I think for all the devotees who are part of the celebration, they love doing all the decorations, they love the practice sessions, they love the amazing work that goes on in the Western canteen to make that special dinner. I think everybody's so happy doing what they're doing, and I think it's that joy.
And I recall, I think a couple of years back, we had a beautiful decoration by, I think, devotees from Poland, if I'm not wrong. They had done decorations through the year.
Yes.
And they brought it here to Prasanthi in December, and they did decoration.
I know. I think what happens
the teamwork
in Prasanthi
is right. It goes back for a long time.
True, it's a culmination of what they have been doing in their countries for months, and I mean, they come 6 months, 1 year before, take the measurements, and start preparing for the theme. And I think, as you mentioned, that whole process of decorating my home, decorating the divine home, which is the home for all of us, is so special, and that's how you find so much joy in Prasanthi. And even as everyone does their little bit for Christmas celebration, Prem and we in the Media Centre, we thought we should do our little offering to Bhagwan. And if you look at Bhagwan's life and the saga of Jesus Christ, there is one incident that really stands out, a very extraordinary, exquisite moment in Bhagwan's life when Swami, out of the blue, or rather out of the woods, Swami created the crucifix. Swami created the image of Christ on the cross, and it was as real as the incident happened 2000 years ago. And this was a moment of revelation for Dr. John Hislop, who was blessed with that materialization. And if you look at that materialization, it was not only just a very unique, rare, out of the world materialization, but the deep messages inherent in that, the profound lessons that are there in that act of the divine, that miraculous incident, is something we thought we should ponder on, because there are very, very powerful messages for us as we celebrate Christmas. And that's what we decided we will do today. So with Bhagwan's blessings and seeking his permission and guidance, we start this session on the crucifix materialized by Bhagwan and its significance. Those of us who have read the book My Baba and I by Dr. John Hislop are aware of it. You have read the details that he has mentioned, but fortunately for us, we have the video of Dr. John Hislop himself talking about this episode. So we will listen and watch Dr. John Hislop, and then we will share more details and then go into the insights and what we can learn to make this Christmas really, really special for us.
We were in India in the Bandipur forest at the time of Mahashivaratri, and Swami was driving around through the forest with several people to locate a place where the ceremony could be held. And we finally found a dry river bottom, and that evening we all came back again, got out of the cars and started to walk down the slope of the hill towards the dry river bottom. I happened to be walking beside Swami, and we passed a small bush. And Swami picked off 2 twigs and held them in the form of the cross like that, and said, Hislop, what is that? I said, well, Swami, it's a cross. So he then put the 2 twigs in his hand like that, and blew 3 times on his hand, and opened his hand, and there was this cross that you see here on the back of my hand. He said, this is Christ as he really and truly was, not as artists and historians have pictured him. His stomach's all drawn in through several days of no food and so on. So I looked at it and I said, well, Swami, what is that hole at the top of the cross? He said, that is the hole that was made in the cross to hang the cross on a standard. And he said, furthermore, the wood of the cross is a piece of the actual cross upon which Christ was crucified. Then he added, and I can tell you it took a little time and trouble to find a piece of that wood after some 2,000 years.
So that was a small clipping of Dr. Hislop speaking about that beautiful episode. Of course, he was narrating it very, very briefly. We thought we will add in a few more details from his other writings and his other narrations. As it was mentioned, the year was 1973.
Yes.
I think in 1972 also Swami had celebrated Shivratri in Vrindavan. But it was a time when the Shivratri was becoming difficult to manage.
Yes.
Because of the crowds that were gathering to have a glimpse of the Lingodbhavam that Swami would do. So in that particular year, Swami said, I think, I'm not going to do this anymore in public. The year 1973, Swami was in Vrindavan. Swami calls Dr. Hislop the day before Shivratri and tells him, be ready with your cab at 5:30 in the morning and let Kasturi be in your car. Kasturi knows where we're going, but you be ready. So, he says that maybe Swami didn't trust me to keep the secret. So they were excited. And of course, there was a bus full of college students who were also accompanying. And they went to the game reserve in the Bandipur forest. So when they went there, they all know that one of the sights that people want to have when they go to the Bandipur forest is the herds of elephants. That roam around in the forest. So they went around, and Hislop says they went round and round the forest. They couldn't see even one elephant. In fact, he says that an earlier occasion, when he had the opportunity to be a part of a trip like that, the convoy of cars went into the forest. At one particular point, Swami stopped the car, and Swami got down from the car and walked ahead almost little into the jungle. And a few other devotees kept a little distance but also followed Swami. And all of a sudden, they heard the trumpeting of a huge elephant. And from in the thick of the jungle, there is this massive tusker which comes running, literally charging towards Swami. And all the devotees run away. And Swami turns back and says, "Hey, you all left me." At a moment like this, they all abandoned me and ran away. And then Swami
When you
was
should actually
standing
be
there.
holding on to
Right.
Swami.
And Swami was standing there, and this elephant, it looked like it was charging towards Swami. It came and stood in front of Swami, knelt down, bowed, and put his head on in front of Swami's feet.
Wow.
And Swami blessed it, and it got up and it went back into the jungle.
Awesome.
So Hislop was saying that we were all hoping that something like that would happen, but that day they did not see any sight like that. So when they were going around, they were riding over a bridge, and beneath it was this dry riverbed. The river was not, summer months, so it wasn't flowing.
Full, yeah.
And Swami said, "That is the place." And they all got down from the car and they went to that particular riverbed. And Swami said, "This is the place. We'll have Shivratri Bhajans here." And they got into the car and Swami said, "We'll come back at 6:30. So when Swami came back again at around 6:30 for the bhajans, that is when, as Swami was walking, as Dr. Hislop also narrated, Swami broke two twigs.
Yes.
Then he put it across, put it one over the other and asked Dr. Hislop, "What is this?" And he said, "Swami, it's a cross." And he says that Swami holds it in his closed fist and then blows. And we all have seen, I think even there are videos of Swami blowing and changing rings and things like that. But the way Swami blew that day was a little different. Swami took deep breaths and slowly kept blowing at it for 3 or 4 times. And then came the cross that was materialized. And of course, few other things that he narrates about that episode. He says that that is when they all go and sit there and Swami sings bhajans and Swami performs Lingodbhavam there.
Yes. Yeah.
And as all of this is happening, they realize that, when they're all just making themselves comfortable sitting around the riverbed, they're finding bones and skeletons around. And that is when it occurred to them they were actually sitting on a cremation ground.
Wow.
And it was, you can understand the thrill and the significance of that moment. You're with Swami. It is a beautiful Shivratri evening. Bhajans are going on. Swami is materializing performing the Lingodbhavam. And you're actually on a cremation ground where the scriptures say was the abode of Lord Shiva. And Swami did not stop there. Swami also materialized a small casket, silver casket in which there was Amritam.
Yes.
And then Swami distributed that Amritam to everyone.
He materialized a silver spoon.
Right,
also.
silver spoon also, and gave everybody over there. So very, very significant. The beautiful materialization of the cross in itself was so beautiful, as he narrates. Swami tells him that the wood from which the cross is made is the very wood on which Jesus Christ was crucified. And Swami said, "It took me all the while to bring it back because it had gone back to its elements." And then he reveals some details which probably others might not have known. He says you can see that the stomach of Jesus is drawn in because he had not eaten for 8 days. There was a hole on the cross, as you can see the images that we are sharing with you. There was a hole, and Swami said the actual way he was crucified was the cross was hung on a standard.
Yes.
And not merely planted in the ground as sometimes it is visually depicted. So all of this, the beautiful and profound significance of the cross, and then Swami performing the Lingodbhavam on a cremation ground on a Shivratri day, and then producing Amrita, right? Absolutely. The whole of Jesus' message was about moving towards eternal life.
Yes.
Right? And it's a very, very significant and beautiful episode. And so, dear listeners, we thought this was the episode that we should talk to you all about as we are moving closer towards the Christmas celebrations.
And Dr. John Hislop says that was in fact the greatest sculpture, the greatest art of Jesus ever made, because it was as real.
The pain on the face was real.
The pain on the face was real. The details were so real. And in fact, he says that, perhaps for him, it was the most extraordinary object that Bhagwan had ever materialized for a devotee because of the profundity as well as the immaculate manner. You could see the different features of Jesus Christ on that cross. But the thing is, it was very small. As Swami later on says that, he had to really reconstitute the elements. So Swami said, I just got enough
Wood.
enough wood to make a little cross, because all the elements are disintegrated. All the wood has disintegrated into the elements, and the figure of Jesus was just 1 inch. And so Dr. John Hislop had his friend who took pictures and magnified, and that's how they had a little larger images of the cross and Jesus. And in fact, only when he sees that enlarged image of Jesus, that's when Dr. John Hislop is in awe, looking at the features of Jesus Christ. And a few days later, this friend comes back with very big photographic enlargements of the cross. And that evening, while they are at their home in Mexico, on the dining table, they place these huge images of the cross. And as Dr. Hislop says, it was a very clear evening. The sky was calm, and they were really in shock, because they never ever thought that they would be having such a vision of Jesus Christ. Perhaps nobody has actually seen that image of Jesus. And their heart is overflowing with gratitude for Swami, for the grace that he has showered. So they didn't know how to thank Swami. They were so overwhelmed with love for Jesus looking at that. And he says, suddenly the sky, which was absolutely silent till then, became sudden thunder, lightning, and they saw that the storm that immediately arose was so furious that it almost like the curtains were going to tear, and it was as if the glasses of their window panes are going to shatter, and they were really shattered. What was happening? What is this tempest which had suddenly arisen? And even as they were shocked and they were wondering this mystical phenomenon that was panning out in front of them, Mrs. Hislop, she had this inner revelation, sort of, and she says, it is 5 a.m. Jesus also left his body at 5 p.m. This is the recreation of that evening. And it's really Swami's grace that, she could get that thought instead of any other thought.
Mm.
And once they realized that, they understood the meaning of that moment. In fact, they immediately went and brought the Bible, and they went to that specific chapter which talks about the passing of Jesus. And it was exactly the same. When Jesus left his mortal coil, it was an evening when there was sudden thunder, sudden lightning, and they say the curtains of the temple tore asunder. And they knew Bhagwan has been so gracious that he not only gave them a vision of Jesus, but also recreated for them that actual moment of Christ merging into his Father. I and my Father becoming one. They were able to experience that moment. In fact, few months later, Dr. Hislop wrote about this entire episode and he sent it to Dr. Fanibanda.
Mm-hmm.
He was writing the book Vision of the Divine.
Vision of the Lord.
And at that point in time, Dr. Fanibanda presented this chapter to Bhagwan and Swami corroborated it. Swami said, yes, everything that he has mentioned is right. And 2 years later, 1975, when Bhagwan was not in Vrindavan, Dr. Hislop, who, as many of us know, was the one who started the Sathya Sai organization in the US and done yeoman service to the Sathya Sai movement, he had suddenly come for Bhagwan's Darshan. It was not a trip that he had mentioned to Swami about. And Swami was not in Vrindavan. But Swami told the devotees around, Hislop has just arrived in Bangalore and Hislop is waiting for me. And then when a devotee mentioned to Swami, Swami, you materialized the cross, the crucifix for him. And Swami said, yes, yes, I did it for him. It took a long time. I had to go back to the elements and I had to recreate and reconstitute the cross from the same wood. But I did it for Hislop. And then comes that amazing statement from Bhagwan where Swami says, very rarely do I interfere with nature, but in exceptional situations, for a devotee, I will do it. For a devotee, I can do anything. As they say, no, प्रबल प्रेम के पाले पढ़कर प्रभु को नियम बदलना नियम बदलते देखा. I have seen the Lord mend his rules, change his rules, bend his rules because of the love that he has for his devotee. And in fact, there are so many such instances when you look at Bhagwan's life where Bhagwan has quote unquote altered nature, done things which are absolutely beyond the imagination only because of the love that a devotee had. In fact, when Bhagwan went to Africa, everyone made a big deal about it because the first trip of Bhagwan outside the country. But Swami said, no, for me it was nothing. I was just going to a devotee's home. It's just that the devotee happened to stay in Africa. It does not matter for me. I was going because Dr. C.G. Patel, who loves me so much, he called me to his home, so I went there. So for the sake of the devotee, God can do anything. And we know how Swami brought back Walter Cowan. We know how Swami brought back Sheshagiri Rao, the first Pujari. In fact, Walter Cowan, when he had died in the hotel, we know that story, how his soul went into this huge hall and Bhagwan was there. And there was these voluminous scrolls and everything about his past life was being examined. And there was the judge sitting. And of course, the profound message there was, in most of his lives, he had done such good work. Walter Cowan, he had led such a righteous life. He had always focused on spirituality, on social service, and his character was always something that was so virtuous. And at the end of that entire reading, Bhagwan says to the judge, send him back to the earth because he has more work to do. And that's how Walter Cowan comes back. And we know how later on he played such a significant role in Bhagwan's mission. He was the one who built the hostel for the students and so on. So we have seen any number of times such instances when Bhagwan did something very, very extraordinary because of the love of a devotee. And if anything can melt the Lord, it is the love of his devotee, isn't it?
Absolutely. When talking about elements and doing something that is not natural, again, an episode that many of the long-time devotees would be very aware of, they might have read about it in some of the popular books, is that of Mr. Joel Riordan. Right? He was a Hollywood director, producer.
Yes.
His wife was a devotee of Swami. His wife's mother was a devotee of Swami. But he always was very uncomfortable with this idea of his wife and the rest of the family going to India and making such fuss about this Sai Baba character, as he would often say. And he was very disturbed about it. And finally his wife said, why didn't you come, make a visit and you decide for yourself? So she writes in her book, she says that after a lot of dilly-dallying and wondering whether he will come or he will not make the trip, finally he agrees and they all board the flight to India. But a little before that, he says that he was having lunch with a very eminent person from the Hollywood industry. And that person happened to ask him, I heard you're going to India to see Sai Baba. What do you plan to do? And what do you plan to ask him? That's what he had asked. So he said, I don't know, maybe I'll ask this character for a rainbow. Right? That's what he had thought. Because interestingly, Mr. Joel, he comes from a family where his parents were in the show business. They were showmen. In the sense, they were part of a circus that used to go around. He said, I literally was brought up, I spent a lot of my childhood in a circus. So I've seen a lot of these people who do tricks and conjuring and, these kind of acts where you create a visual illusion and all of that. So he said, I know that he must be doing something like that. Yeah. He can cheat everybody, but he can't cheat me because I come from this background. So that's what he thought to himself. And he said, let's see if this character can make a rainbow for me. If he is really God, then he should be able to make a rainbow because only God makes a rainbow, right? So this is what he had, in a very casual remark. It's not like he had thought about it. He just said it at the spur of the moment. Then he boards the flight. He even very lightheartedly remarks about this to his wife. He said, this is what I said. Let's see if it happens. They land up in Puttaparthi after a long and arduous journey. And ever since he stepped in, he's complaining, right? The weather is bad. Yeah. You can imagine in those early years how Puttaparthi must have been.
Living conditions for a person coming from Hollywood
and
would be very difficult.
And you're not in the right frame of mind.
No accommodation.
Right? You're not very happy to be in India to see Swami. Yes. If you're a devotee, it's a totally different thing. Everything else vanishes into the background.
Absolutely.
But when he did not want to make this trip, he did not want to come and see Swami, and his wife was scared that all of this is building up. So she thought that he needs a little bit of relief. So she knew that he had the habit of smoking, and she also knew that it's not permitted in the ashram. So she decides we'll take him somewhere outside the ashram as far as we can, and maybe he can relieve himself by having a smoke. So they walk beyond the hills where I think right now where you have the general hospital and beyond. So there is, even now, I think if you walk up there, you get a beautiful view of the whole Puttaparthi valley. I'm sorry. So she takes him there, and they're sitting on a rock, having this beautiful view of the river flowing and the hills on all sides. So this is a summer afternoon, really hot. And suddenly the husband says, hey, look there, look what is there. And she asks, what is it? It's a rainbow. And as they look there, they see this magnificent looking rainbow. And it's not any rainbow. Yes. Because this is a rainbow like something that they've never seen before. Yes. It's a rainbow that's absolutely straight.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a straight rainbow?
It's a column, right? It's a 7 colored column, literally like that, with the colors just merging into the sky as it goes upwards. Very unique looking rainbow. And it is a rainbow, right? Whether it's unique or not is secondary. Yeah. First of all, Swami was giving him the rainbow he asked for. And then adding to that, it's a very unique looking rainbow. And he was absolutely sure that there's no way this could have been communicated to Swami, because they just landed, they did not meet anyone.
Something they discussed in Los Angeles.
Right. So he says, this is something that this man can be here so far away across the oceans and can hear a conversation that I've had and also give me the rainbow.
Wow.
Right? So he's, of course, very, I wouldn't say very happy, but very startled with the turn of events. So both husband and wife go back to the ashram, and as they go back to their room, it's Professor Kasturi who's waiting there with a broad smile. He says, Swami has just sent word that tomorrow he'll meet all of you. He's called you for an interview. So, of course, the wife is very happy. They're very excited. So the next day they go to Swami's interview room and they're waiting for Swami to come down. Those were the days when Swami used to live above the interview room. And Swami comes down with a twinkle in his eye and a mischievous smile, slaps Joel on his back, and he says, so how did you like the rainbow, character? He says, hello, character, how did you like the rainbow? And he says, my God, he not only knows the prayer I made, but he also knows the name I had for him. And he is very excited. And of course, they sit down and Swami speaks a lot of things. But he says that I was sitting there, I couldn't understand anything that was going on because my mind was full of all these thoughts. Where am I? Do I really have to accept defeat in this small contest that I had with the Sai Baba? And again, he was thinking, I've seen a lot of people do, even mind reading is a thing that you see in some of these acts. She says, I've seen mind readers, I've seen people perform acts of telepathy. So I can't give it away to him just for that, just for reading my mind. Or even in the course of that interview, Swami was revealing some things of some other people who were there in that interview room. So he said, no, I cannot accept all of this. So he says, what else can I ask him? And then he thinks in his mind, maybe I will ask him for a fruit which is out of season, something that cannot be found at this time of the year. And barely that thought crosses his mind, Swami was talking something, suddenly changes the topic and looks at his wife and says, how's your baby? So apparently her daughter was not keeping well because of the journey and the change in climate and all of that. And she said, yes, Swami, she's been having some problems, digestion problems and all of that. And Swami swiftly waves his hand and materializes a fresh fig and gives it to the mother and says, you give it to her, she'll be fine. And he's surprised. So the moment the interview ends, they come out, he grabs the fig from the wife and he looks at it. It's a fig. It's absolutely fresh, like it has been plucked from a tree. And then apparently he goes out into the market to find out, is any shop selling a fig? And everybody tells him that we don't have this fruit here.
You don't find that in South India.
Right?
Forget
you don't find them here at all. And I mean, those were days when you only get here what is grown around the place. So he says it's out of season. It is not to be found anywhere in this region, and it is never sold in any of the shops here. So talking about Swami changing nature and changing elements, the way they function. When you look at it, when you say that for a devotee, I will do anything. Technically speaking, probably Mr. Joel would not qualify as a devotee. But I think in each one of us, there is a devotee who is waiting to come out and embrace the Lord. Right? As Rabindranath Tagore writes in a very beautiful poem, he says, in every time I revolt against you, my master, there is a feeling that I want to be conquered. Right? Just like every storm carries in it the prayer for peace. So I think every person who comes in front of God is like that, is a skeptic hiding a devotee behind the veil.
Absolutely.
And so when Swami does things like this, it is not necessarily that you qualify yourself as a devotee, but if there is an opportunity for a devotee to be born in you, I think that is good enough reason for Swami to bend anything and everything to make something like this happen, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think we have seen any number of such occasions when Swami converted that revolt in the person who thought is not a devotee, and conquered that person's heart. And in fact, there's another interesting story that Mr. Murli Jaju, the National Spiritual Coordinator of All India Sathya Sai Organization, narrates. So this happened sometime in mid-80s. So he was coming to Prasanthi Nilayam, and the way his trip to Prasanthi was planned also was a little interesting. So he was someone whom Bhagwan used to speak to very frequently, and so whenever he came, he would get interviews with Swami. And so a lot of people thought that, the best way to get an interview with Swami is go with Murli Jaju. And Mr. Murli also is a person who in fact used to pray to Swami. Swami, I have had enough opportunities. Now, when you call me with a group. Let others also have that opportunity of experiencing that heaven that is to be with you in the interview room. So he was also a person who loved to go with devotees. So there was this scientist by name Banerjee, and so he and his wife and his son, they call up Murli and say, you're like our son, and you should come with us to Puttaparthi. And so any time to go to Puttaparthi, you only say yes. So as Murli sir says that, I thought that, they love me so much, but it was later on only I came to know all they wanted was I had become their adopted son, because they thought that is the quickest, easiest, surest route for them to get an interview with Swami. And in fact, so a pact had been made that, if Swami calls you for interview, then you say that, my adopted parents are there, so we'll also go. In case Swami calls us, we'll call you also. So that's the pact. So he said, okay, fine, no problem. I'm happy to, be part of this trip, yet another chance to go to Puttaparthi. And just the night before, 10 p.m., so Mr. Banerjee calls him and he says, the driver, he's fallen sick And so I'm trying to make alternate arrangements for drivers, and so we'll figure something out. So Murali sir says, okay, it's already 10 in the night. I don't know whether we can make any arrangement. He says, no, don't worry. So he calls him back at 11. He says, I called my friend. In fact, I called two of my friends. So that friend's driver also is not available. Suddenly he had some emergency. So that friend has told another friend. And finally, we have managed a driver. So we will start a little late, but we will start tomorrow. And that's how their journey starts from Maharashtra. So it's a long drive. And so the next day, Murli sir is sitting next to this driver. And, generally you want to have some conversation to keep the driver engaged because the long drive keep the driver alert. And so Murli sir can only talk about Swami. So he starts talking about Bhagwan. He asks him, do you know about Sathya Sai Baba? He says, no. Have you come to Andhra Pradesh, to Puttaparthi? He says, no. Okay, have you gone to Shirdi? He says, no. He says, no, I have gone to Shirdi. But I didn't have darshan. No, why did you go? No, I was driving the vehicle for someone, so I went. So I didn't have darshan, so I have nothing to do with this darshans. So he said, you went to Shirdi, you didn't have darshan. I said, no, I was in the car. And so, but Murali sir continued to tell him about Swami. So that whole trip, he was telling him so many stories, and this driver was listening to everything as if, he's listening to some nice narrations, like a background music for him. He didn't really show much interest in anything. And so the next day they land in Parthi, and they're sitting for darshan, and then he comes for darshan, this driver also. And Mr. Banerjee is waiting, when will Swami call Murali, and they will get this chance for interview. So Swami comes, and as Bhagwan arrives, from far, Swami is looking not at Murali, not at Banerjee, but at this driver.
Typical of Swami, isn't it?
Yeah. And Swami asked this driver to go inside.
Okay.
So,
They not made a pact with him.
Yeah, they had not made a pact with him. So Mr. Murali and Banerjee are looking at each other's faces. The driver goes in, and once the driver goes in, Swami calls him inside. And the first question Swami asks him is, hey, how many cigarettes? He says, no, Swami, I don't drink, I don't smoke. Hey, Swami says, telling lies? You smoke two full packets of cigarettes every 3 days, and Swami mentions the brand of the cigarette. And now he's really shocked. He's startled. He thought, oh my God, how does this person know all this? And Swami reprimands him severely. And, so he's really shocked, and he falls at Bhagwan's feet, and Swami creates a locket for him, and Swami gives it to him, and Swami says, don't smoke. And just a 2-minute interview, and he comes out, and as he comes out, Swami says, okay. Actually, he holds on to Swami's hand. Swami, speak to me some more, please, I want to be with you some more. Swami says, no, I'll call you tomorrow. And Swami sends him out of the interview room. And so when he comes out of the interview room, now Mr. Banerjee calls this person, and now she wants to have a pact with this driver. And the driver now comes to Murali, and he says, oh my God, what you said is so true. How does this person know about my smoking? Nobody knows about my smoking habit. He said, because I keep traveling. So there's no one shop from where I buy my cigarettes. So nobody in the world knows that I really smoke 2 full packets every 3 days. And this man, he knows even the brand of the cigarette that I smoke. And he says, you're so right. Everything that you've told about him is so true. He's God. He's God. He had his moment of absolute shock and awe and revelation. And but the agenda of Mr. and Mrs. Banerjee is something else, and so they call him. And Mr. Banerjee, they call him the next day, and they tell him, you know what? Actually, last night I had a dream, and in the dream I saw my previous life. And in the previous life, you won't believe, you were actually my son. So, to the extent people can go to, that moment with Swami. Yeah, it's a joy to hear, but that's our desperation to be with Swami. We want somehow, when the physical form was there, I think that was the charm of the physical form. Somehow you want to hook or crook, you wanted that
But that's
opportunity.
the beauty of Maya, right? You want to go closer to him because you think that he is this omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent Lord.
God, yeah.
But you don't mind using techniques like this, which you know that it's going to be
Just
thrown
like-
at your face the very next day if he happens to call you.
Yeah, just like we have, we know of instances when people want to cry in front of Swami, but they use glycerin. So, but that he's God.
Right.
I mean, yeah, as you said, that is how so interesting and deluding it is to be with the Lord. So now the pact is with the driver. And Mr. Banerjee says, so you are like our son. So next day when they're having food, they call him to the same table. They have lunch, together. And so if Swami calls you, you please call us also. We'll also have. He says, fine, there's no problem. And so the next day they all sit for darshan. And Swami completely avoids all three of them. He does not look at any of them. And that night, Mr. Murli feels very bad, because he felt that Swami had told this driver that he will call him, and maybe it's because of all this artificial conditions and artificial relationship that we have set up with this person, that this person is missing his opportunity with Swami. It's because of our association with him that the opportunity that he was supposed to get is being lost. And so that night he prays to Swami, says, Swami, please, if you have to bless the driver, please call him, and don't bother about us, And in fact, he calls Mr. Banerjee also, and he says, this is a prayer that I made, that we should not become obstacles for this driver getting his moments with Swami. And he says, maybe you should also do that prayer. And this is, yeah, very true. Let us. They were also in a mood of repentance, and so they also pray that night to Swami and say, Swami, please, if the driver is meant to receive your grace, let us not become impediments, and please bless him. Whatever you do for us is fine. And so the next morning, when Bhagavan arrives for darshan, from far, Swami looks at the driver and Swami is going. And Murli sir is very happy. At least the driver is getting his opportunity. And as soon as he goes inside the interview room, and Swami is mad at him. Swami shouts at him. Swami says, do you know why I didn't call you? Do you know why I didn't call you yesterday?